Good evening. It is my privilege to welcome you to the National University Speaker Series. We truly appreciate those in attendance this evening from the National University system. Whether you are a current student, alumni, staff, faculty, or a community member, we are very glad that you could take time out of your schedule to join us for tonight's webinar. My name is Nancy Roland Heinrich, and I serve as the Vice Chancellor for Communications and Community Engagement for the National University System. It has been my pleasure to serve as the host for the National University Speaker Series. These webinars have featured wonderful speakers and subject matter experts on a wide range of topics. We have been very pleased to feature accomplished alumni, faculty, and community members. Tonight, we are honored to feature Natasha Welch as our speaker. Natasha has focused her career on neurology and specializes as a concussion clinician and physical therapist, also serving as the owner of Symphony Rehabilitation. She has earned her undergraduate and graduate degrees from University of British Columbia and is joining us this evening from Canada. Welcome, Natasha. Her topic will address how one can optimize your brain health, which in turn will foster and deepen your own leadership skills. She will be speaking about the 4 pillars of brain health and how understanding these pillars are aligned with the direct connection to your ultimate expression of health. We all look forward to tonight's presentation, Optimizing Your Brain Health to Foster Leadership. During the session, please submit any questions you have in the chat. Following the presentation, we will have a Q&A, which will be moderated by Heather Piedrahita. We look forward to hearing more from Natasha on this fascinating topic. Natasha?
Let's unmute myself to start. Thank you. All right, so we're going to swap screen shares here. Give me 1 second. There we go. We can all see my lovely PowerPoint and me hugging my brain. Yes. I am so excited to be here, and thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your evening. I'm sure many of you are coming off work, getting kids settled. My husband is taking my son to the BMX track, and I'll meet them there later. But this is a topic I'm really excited to be here with you presenting about. So optimizing brain health to foster leadership. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, I love seeing faces. So as we go through this, if you are in a place where you can turn your cameras on so I can connect with you, even if it's through a screen, that would make my evening. Also, as leaders, sometimes we don't even realize we're leading. We lead by being who we are. We lead by modeling habits, by empathizing with people, by empowering people, and just the way you choose to live your life exemplifies who you are as a leader in itself. Being here tonight, engaging in this talk, wanting to learn tools to help you optimize brain health, to be a better leader, is already a bigger step. So here's what I'm going to ask for those of you that are on social media. If you feel at all called at any point in this presentation to take a picture of the screen, to post it to your stories and tag me in it. This is, just hold your camera over this QR code and it'll take you right to my Instagram. You never know, just by you sharing in that story that you're here, that you're learning, that you are prioritizing yourself, what that will do in creating a ripple in the people around you. It's beautiful. Now, before we get started, I actually want to ask you just to get comfortable where you're sitting. Get your feet, get in the chair. Feel the back of the chair absorb around you. And I just want all of us, we've come off work days, kids. I want us to take a big breath in. And I want you to just let it out. Shake it out a little bit. And we're going to do that a couple more times. Big breath in. and shake it out. On this last time, as you shake it all out, I want you to let yourself sink into wherever you're sitting. If you would like to turn your cameras off for this one, you can. And I would like you to close your eyes. Where is my mouse? Here we go. And we're going to go on a little journey. So get comfy. Sit back. Let yourself sway a little bit. You sink into your surface. And when you feel ready for your I want you to inhale. One and hold. 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, thank you, 2, 1, and hold. 2, 1, let it all out, exhale. Inhale. With each inhale you do, feel yourself absorb and sink into your surface, and hold for 3, 2, 1, and let it all out. Inhale, feel that breath travel all the way down into your hips. And hold for 3, 2, 1. Let it out. On our next one, we're gonna sigh. So here we go. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Sigh it out. Let the breath escape your throat. Feel any stress and tension from the day seep out of you as your breath leaves. 2 more. Inhale. Hold. Sigh it out. Last one. Hold. Sigh. Feel free to take a couple more breaths on your own, and when you're ready, come back to us. Turn on your cameras if you feel so inclined. We will continue. Now I can see the chat thread right now, so I'm super curious. If you just drop a 1 in the chat, if you just feel a little more grounded, a little more calm after doing just those 2 minutes of breath. Yeah. It brings us all together in a little bit of a better spot, doesn't it? I want to take you on a story. So I'm a clinician, I'm a physical therapist. And so I work predominantly with clinic owners, other clinicians, high performers, all these lovely things. And there was a clinic owner that came to me, and I want to share with you a little bit of her story. She was someone who had really big dreams, and she'd built her clinic up fairly quickly, had a great team, had an admin team. They worked really well together. And then life kind of happened. With life comes stress. In 2020 came COVID. And in Canada and in many of the US, clinics were forced to close their doors. So what slowly started happening was, over a period of time, this clinic owner noticed that she'd lost her way. She didn't really know and have clarity about what she was trying to do for her clinic anymore. Things felt kind of hodgepodge. She was dealing with brain fog, and she was reactive. Her creativity was gone. Someone who used to be able to think of ideas and implement couldn't implement anything. Short-term memory issues, was forgetting things, was not in the best place in her own life. And then she comes into a clinic where she has to try to lead a team. But she's trying to lead a team without a vision. She's trying to lead a team when she doesn't have a direction on where they're going. She's trying to lead a team when she can barely hold space in her own life, but she's supposed to be able to hold space for her team members. There came a point where she shared this scenario where her clinic manager came to her, and the words out of her clinic manager's mouth were, "I need to share something with you, but I need you to not react." As a leader, when she shared that, that's a bit of a sucker punch. She'd unconsciously and not purposely created this environment where her staff were tiptoeing around her on eggshells, feeling like they couldn't come talk to her. She was not the woman or the leader that she wanted to be, and her having difficulty in her own life with these areas was spilling into her business. How many of us drop a 1 in the chat, if you've ever been here, whether you're similar to the clinic owner who is struggling with clarity, who is struggling with brain fog, who is struggling with how to lead her own team? Yeah, me too. Drop a 2 in the chat for me if you've been like her team members were, that you felt like you had to walk on eggshells around your colleagues or around a partner or around your boss. Yeah. We've all been in both of these situations, right? Many of us, yeah, a 1 and a 2 from Becky. Like, we've all been in these spots. And they don't feel very good in either scenario. And we can't show up and be the people we want to be and the leaders we want to be when we're in either of these situations, right? So this clinic owner had come to a fork in the road. She was faced with a decision because she recognized what was happening. She could either turn into herself, do the work, figure out why these things and why she was behaving the way she was, to address it, to be able to step into the person she knew she was meant to be able to lead her team again. Or she could take the other road, which was keep doing what she was doing, and she would undoubtedly continue to push her team further away. She could come back to who she was. She could lean in, she could realign, she could reestablish the core in the team so that they could have the impact they had all dreamed of having when they came together to begin with. Or she could face the hard reality that if things didn't change, she might not just push her team away, but she might lose her clinic as well. That clinic owner that I worked so closely with, that clinic owner that I journeyed with through these phases, that clinic owner was me. And that was one of the hardest 2 years ago I had to work through, right? This is why I am so passionate about this. This is why I teach on it, because we're all human and life happens. But for me, I allowed it to get to a point where I had to react to this situation instead of being proactive to prevent myself as best I could of getting there. We all have big goals. We all have big visions. And when I took my journey through this is why I do it today, because I don't want any of you to get to the point of that fork in the road that I had to face. So over the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to introduce you to the 4 pillars of brain health. But tonight we're going to talk about 1 specifically, because there's a lot. And when we're talking about this 1, because when you comprehend it, it can have truly profound impact on every aspect of your life. All right, so we're going to jump back to screen share here. Maybe. Here we go. Jumping back to screen share. So high level, and you guys are all going to get these handouts if you don't have them already. They will be sent with your replay. Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a handout you're going to get. Okay. So this is high level, your 4 pillars of brain health. That is a happy brain in the middle. And surrounding that happy brain, the 4 pillars are your neurology and physiology, your lifestyle habits, your mindset and beliefs, and your community and support. Now for tonight, we're going to hone in the neurology and physiology section. This is my specialty, but we're specifically going to talk about, oh goodness, here we go, the autonomic nervous system. Now, Heather, we have a poll that we can draw up here. Yes. I think. Here we go. Oh, there it is. Here we go. So just quick curiosity, the autonomic nervous system is getting a lot of buzz right now. And so I want to know where you guys are at. Yeah, so is this new to me? I've heard of it, but don't really understand it, or I'm a rock star in this topic. Give a couple minutes here. Da, da, da. Lovely. Okay, so we have a couple rock stars. We have some people where it's new and some people where they've heard of it, but we don't really understand what it is, which is great. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to end this poll. Thank you, Heather. Screens, so many screens. Here we go. So I want you to think, we're going to come back to this slide, but in a minute, I want you to think of a house. Okay. You're building your dream house. Now, if you're like me, you're picking out your lighting fixtures, your wallpaper, the railings you're going to have on your staircase, those beautiful details. If you're like my husband, you're picking out the gutters and the shingles and the type of concrete we're going to use on our stairs. But regardless, for both of those things to come to life, it needs to be built on a solid foundation. You don't chintz on the foundation of your house, or your house isn't going to last. The autonomic nervous system is our foundation for human function. Everything we do builds on or influences our autonomic nervous system. The ANS, as we call it, is your house foundation. And this is why we want to pay attention to it. This is why it can have such a profound impact in your life. Now, like the name implies, it's autonomic. You don't have to think about it. It regulates on its own. It regulates, integrates, and orchestrates processes within your physiology. It operates unconsciously. You don't have to try to remember to breathe. You don't have to think about your blood vessels constricting or expanding. You don't have to think about your pupils changing sizes in different light. It just happens. However, our thoughts, our behaviors, our habits, 100% can influence our autonomic nervous system. So we're going to get a little more nerdy, if that's okay, because that's just me. You saw a picture of me hugging my brain. This is the way I roll. We're going to get a little more nerdy. Two main branches of our autonomic nervous system. We have what's called our parasympathetic. This is our rest and digest. This is the one that after you just did that breath work, if you felt nice and calm and grounded, this was the state you were most likely in. This is the branch that's active in those quiet, restful situations. It's involved when we need to conserve energy. When we're in a parasympathetic state, we can exude feelings of calm. We can smile, we laugh, we interact, we have social engagement, we have resilience. Physiologically, it slows our heart rate, it promotes digestion, and it slows the way we breathe. The vagus nerve is our main thing. So you see lots of stuff out there right now on the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a key nerve within the parasympathetic system. This system, my friends, this is the system, this is the state you're in when you have increased capacity to accept feedback, like from my clinic manager, to take that feedback in, process it, and respond as opposed to snap and react. This is the state we're in when we can create space and hold space for our employees to come speak with us about a concern or an issue they're having. This is the state we're in when we get creative ideas, when we can map out a plan, when we can implement. The opposite of this is our sympathetic system. This is your fight or flight. This is your mobilization system. So physiologically, it's involved in blood pressure regulations and all these other lovely things. It slows digestion, so constipation, bloating, that's related to your sympathetic nervous system. Increased cortisol, it increases your heart rate. So if you're someone that, you're in the situation where your resting heart rate's pushing that 90 beats per minute for whatever reason, you got some sympathetic influence kicking in. In terms of how we present and how we function when we live in this sympathetic dominance, this can lead to feelings of anxiousness, of panic or uneasiness, of that hypervigilance, of feeling disconnected or dissociated from people, that reactivity, increased inflammation. Now, we need both of these. Absolutely, we need both of these. But what's happening a lot today in the culture of do, I must do this, rest isn't prioritized, we shift ourselves to be more sympathetically dominant. How many of you want to live your life with those characteristics that I just shared? Right? We don't all want to live in a state of anxiousness. We don't want to live in a state of reactivity. But this is what happens when we live in the sympathetic state. Now, many things, remember how I said it operates unconsciously, but you can absolutely influence how it operates? This is another handout you are going to receive. You will have this in your email. Many, many things. Here's the job of the autonomic nervous system. Your brain and your body take all of this information in from your environment, from your internal environment and your external, right? So it factors in and pulls in your physical activity amounts. It pulls in the language you use, like hormones, the way you breathe, the stress of your life, how your other systems operate, the people, if there's past trauma or triggers. All of this stuff comes in, your brain processes it, and it makes a decision. It decides whether it feels safe and supported. And if it feels safe or supported, then you end up staying in more of this parasympathetic place. But it could also take all that information and it could instead say, there's an error here. Something's not lining up or making sense. It could also say, there's a threat. I'm not safe. And you'll see on this handout, I say perception of threat. Because you logically know you could be safe and you are safe. Logically, you can rationalize it, you can explain the scenario and you're like, I'm safe. But your nervous system doesn't always operate in logic. So if all of this information comes in and it perceives an error or a threat, then that lovely sympathetic branch decides it needs to wake up and it activates. And again, these are more things that show up with a dominant sympathetic. So beyond the things we talked about with the anxiousness and the depression and all those pieces, we get increased reactivity, increased heart rate, increased sweating, decreased ability to heal if you have an injury, right? So I work a lot with concussion. When concussions live in a sympathetic dominance, we can't heal as well. Now, when I was a student, when I did my master's and my bachelor's, This is what we got taught. But then what we said was, well, it's autonomic. It's this abstract thing. You can't really do anything about it. And that was what we learned. That's where our education ended. The beautiful thing is there's such an increased interest in science in this today. There's been a lot more research looking at this and looking at how we can measure it without big labs and big technology. Here's the beautiful thing. We all like to be able to measure things, right? Because if we can measure something, we then have the ability to observe the impact of our actions on that objective measure. We also then have the ability to make a conscious decision to change or not to change. So say you've made this decision here, I'm going to increase my health and I'm going to use this tool that I talk about in a second to help guide whether these decisions make sense for me and my body and my physiology. But every Friday and Saturday, I go out for wine with my friends or with the group after work. And I notice via this measure we're going to look at, for 4 days after that, my values plummet. I'm more foggy, I'm more groggy, I'm not as slow, my numbers don't look as good. You now have not only what you feel, but you have a number to be like, ooh, this decision might not be the best one if I truly want to improve the health that I say I'm going to want to improve. Having that objective data, which I'm a nerd, I love objective data, gives us a deeper insight into our health and trends. So here comes poll number 2. That insight is called heart rate variability. So Heather's going to pull up our second poll. Option number 1, I use HRV regularly as a tool in my health and wellness. I have heard of it, but I don't use it, or I've never heard of it before. Give you guys about 30 seconds to respond. Love it. So we have a few people who use it regularly. That's wonderful. We have some people who've never heard of it, which is great, and have heard of it but don't use it. I'm going to say that's usually the most common one. People hear of it or they've heard the letters, but they don't know what to do with it. Okay. So let's do a little high level HRV 101. I'm going to get rid of this poll here. So when we measure our heart rate, right? So someone will say to you, what's your heart rate? 60 beats per minute, 62 beats per minute. That is an average. What actually happens when our heart beats is, this is called our QRS complex. We have variability between the time between each of the heartbeats. And that's what we want. That measure, the measure of the variability between these peaks, is what's called our heart rate variability, or our HRV. Our HRV is an accepted measure in the industry and in science of the health of our autonomic nervous system, the health, the strength of the foundation of our house, which is us. A healthy HRV tells us that the ANS, the autonomic system, is appropriately able to respond to the environment. It's able to self-regulate, adapt, and be resilient. And that's what we need to function, because life is not always going to be tickety-boo. The numbers and the beautiful thing, so anyone here who has an Apple Watch, or there's Garmin's or Fitbits, these all measure HRV. If you have a polar heart rate monitor, it measures HRV. I'm going to tell you an app you can download for free on your cell phone in a minute that also measures HRV. This is something that is available to us, the everyday person, to use as a tool. Now, what we know is that lower numbers, which means there's not a lot of variability in the heart rate, are more representative of a weak foundation, let's say. You're in that sympathetic dominant state. When we're on the higher end, in a healthy high, we have a stronger foundation. We are more parasympathetic. That is our goal. So how does this apply to us even more so in our roles as leader? Besides just what I talked about and how you feel and kind of the way it shows up, what is the research telling us? A lower HRV, right? So sympathetic dominance, creaky foundation, the research tells us is predictive of poorer performance, particularly on executive function tasks. It is tied to a decreased ability to pay attention and poorer performance on short-term and long-term memory. So let's think about trying to lead a team and we're struggling with attention and memory and executive function. That's going to impact our ability to do our job and to lead the way we want to lead, isn't it? From a purely health perspective, it's also linked to increased risk of chronic illness, increased risk of heart disease, and in some studies, premature death. Not to scare you, but this is where this information is coming. So if I take it back to myself for a second, all of those things I just talked about were things that I was struggling with, right? My memory was terrible. I wasn't performing tasks the way I wanted to do. I wasn't able to integrate with my team the way I wanted to integrate. But I also want to introduce you to Tom. So Tom was a client of mine, quite the high-performing client, doing amazing things. When I talk about those 4 pillars of health, Tom was phenomenal in the mindset and the lifestyle and the community support areas. Tom's biggest issue was actually brain fog and pain. He dealt a lot with chronic pain. Chronic pain is typically tied to increased inflammation as well throughout the body. When Tom and I started talking, we met at a conference. And if you get me talking, sometimes it's hard to get me to stop. Tom and I met at a conference. And so we started talking about brain. He had a history of concussions from when he was younger. And he knew me as the concussion person. So we got on this talk and he started sharing about his brain fog and he started sharing about his pain. And I asked him if he used anything to track HRV. And he fell into that category where about half of you fell into, where he'd heard of it, but he wasn't using it to guide anything. He just so happened to have the app on his phone though. So we pulled it up and we looked at his numbers. Now, Tom is in his 30s and his HRV numbers, my friends, were in their low 20s. Via the app he was using, he should have been in his 60s. So Tom was very much living in this sympathetic dominant state. And all these other things he was doing were amazing in helping him, but we needed to strengthen his foundation. Tom's brain fog, and when you're in brain fog, it uses more energy than you want to use. It affects your road to clarity. It affects your decision-making. With Tom, we put him through what I call a multi-systems assessment to figure out where we needed to focus. And Tom actually came out to Vancouver to work with me for a week on some of the neurology components, because that was a piece of it linked to his concussions. And his brain fog started to clear within the week. However, we also knew we needed to have strategies to consistently support his nervous system, to consistently help it shift from this sympathetic to this parasympathetic and help his pain and inflammation. So I hope you're beginning to see how important this is, the foundation piece, and how it impacts every aspect of you as a leader in your life. So now I want to shift into looking at a few strategies that you can implement to start to do that. And then I'm going to give you a homework assignment. We're going to talk about 4. So bottom left corner, that is a picture of someone breathing. We started this session together doing some breath. I think we did about 2 minutes of it. And in that 2 minutes, when I asked you, how many of you feel more calm and more grounded? I saw a whole lot of ones go up in my chat. Breath is one of the most powerful tools you can use to tap into that parasympathetic piece and shift you into a more parasympathetic rest and digest from the fight and flight. Here's the key. You need to do it consistently, because when you practice it consistently, it starts to build this almost reservoir. It starts to build your capacity. It starts to build the amount of space you have to hold and move through stress. So that when you are in a scenario that you feel yourself getting restless, you feel those things ramping up, you can then utilize your breath because you've done it to help yourself calm. So what I say to people when we're starting to bring breath into their day-to-day life is, do me a favor and just start with 2 minutes a day. That's it. You can do it on your lunch break. You can do it when you get up in the morning, but just start with 2 minutes. The hardest part is when you're feeling good, people stop. Keep going. That's when we're really starting to gain momentum. Option number 2, top left corner. That is me in a toque in the month of December in the ocean. I started cold plunging December 3rd, I believe it was, and we shortly got snow after, because I was at a state where I would wake up every morning feeling like I was going to throw up. The thought of having to support someone else's challenges increased that feeling. I'm a physical therapist who works with people with concussion. I am a coach who helps high performers improve their brain health. And I am a mom and a wife, and I was having trouble holding space. Not okay. Cold plunging, you're also seeing a lot more because it is another beautiful tool to shift you from a sympathetic dominance into parasympathetic. For me, the reason I started with these two for you is because together they were the biggest game changers for me. I would go plunge in the ocean, and I started at 30 seconds, I think. I would go plunge in the ocean, and by the time I walked out of the ocean, I was shifted. I was in a calmer place to then be able to continue with my day. I am not saying you have to start by going in the ocean. Some of you might not have access to water. You see this show up in other ways. You see people talk about cold showers. So you start with a warm shower, and towards the end of the shower, you slowly start to turn the water down so it's cooler. The key is that you're focusing on your breath in the process. For clients who we introduce this, I tell them to start with just putting their hands, cold water with their hands, and just starting to get their face wet and just putting their face in the cold water. There's many different ways you can begin to integrate this, but for me, this was one of the biggest game changers. And it is a game changer for many of my clients. When I talked about Tom, we implemented cold plunging into his routine, and it has been paramount in bringing the inflammation down in his body and decreasing his pain. Bottom right-hand corner, laughter. I want you to prioritize joy. You prioritize things that make you bust a gut laughing, that have tears rolling down your face, because that feeling releases dopamine, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter, creates connection, creates bonding, and all of those things are positive fuel into our nervous system. And last but not least, what kind of physical therapist would I be if I did not mention the top right corner, physical activity? Okay, the research again shows us that physical activity is a tool when we get our heart rate up that will absolutely shift the HRV. Deconditioning is linked with lower heart rate variability numbers. The hard part with exercise always is people think of it as a chore. And if you start to shift your mindset on how you approach exercise and what it does for the greater aspect of your health and your vision and your team and your family, you get to start to look forward to it every day. These are 4 ways that the research tells us we can use to implement and shift that number up. These are 4 ways that if you do these measures in a second and you see that you got a bit of a creaky foundation, you can strengthen it. So here's your action steps. Sorry. Now, I gave this talk, or a talk similar to this, in October. And there was a gentleman there. His name was Graham. And Graham did this homework. And I told him, I said, he came up to me later. He's like, Natasha, my HRV is terrible. And Graham was again, within his 30s. HRV numbers came in the teens. And he was like, I have young kids. I have a wife. I have a career. And I said, and he walked away from the event and he went and did some more reading. And then he reached out and he said, can we jump on a call? So we jumped on a call and we talked about what his numbers meant some more and what he'd done and read into. And then we took Graham through an assessment on what would be, if he could focus on one thing for the next month that would potentially give him the greatest return on investment, with your investment being your time, to start to see a shift in those numbers, what would that be? Because here's the thing, we didn't get here overnight, so we're not going to change it overnight. This is where consistency comes in. Unfortunately, in today's society, we want instant gratification. That just doesn't happen here. Graham went away. We reconnected about 6 weeks later. He consistently put in new habits and his numbers were shifting and he was happier than a clam. Simply by doing this. So this is your homework. I want you to measure your HRV for 1 week. Now, and Heather, I'm going to send you a link. I'm just going to drop this in here to go out in the email. There is a free app in your app store called Camera HRV. So if you don't have a device that already measures it, you can go into the app store and you can download this app. There's other things called Whoop bands or Oura rings or Apple watches that all measure HRV as well. And I want you to measure it for 1 week. And this is really just to get an idea of what your norm is. And then I want you to go back and choose one of these 4. This is not a talk on habits, but we know that if we try to implement too many things at once, nothing actually happens. So let's pick one. And I want you to monitor it and adjust it. Pay attention to what happens in your life when you notice shifts in your numbers, right? We talked about when we have this ability to measure, we get to make conscious choices. We get to be aware of how our actions implement our health in a really great way. You will all have my contact information after this call so that if you have questions, please do reach out and ask. Share any insights, share some wins, share your thoughts. I am here to support. I got into this space of concussion for a very specific reason. My dad had a brain injury when I was 17 years old. And I very clearly know how that affected not only his life, but my life. His accident was the reason I went into physical therapy. It's the reason I went into brain health. It's the reason I went into concussion initially. But when I got into this space, when I started working with my concussion clients or my high performers or my athletes, when I started going through my own journey, I realized over and over and over again, we have the opportunity to be proactive in our health as opposed to reactive. So much of healthcare today is reactive. I reached a state where I was living in that sympathetic dominance. I was snappy. I was not as open. I was straight up a terrible leader. But I did the work. And as I did the work and as I worked with more clients, I kept seeing over and over and over and over again the opportunity for us to be proactive in strengthening our foundations so you do not end up at the crossroads that I ended up at. By optimizing your brain health, By prioritizing yourself and the habits that will strengthen your human foundation, you will be able to lead from a place of grounded calm. You will have the increased capacity to receive feedback, process it, and respond appropriately. You will have increased clarity to be able to have creativity to birth some of your greatest ideas and then lead a team through them. We likely have two kinds of people that are on this webinar. We have those of you that have a great action plan, you're content with what you're doing, this was interesting, you're going to tuck it away and keep doing what you're doing, and that's amazing if it's working for you. Then we have another group of you who are going to be similar to Graham, similar to Tom, who decide to look into this, who decide to try something new, who decide to look at this and your own life and see where you can shift and improve. If you consciously choose to strengthen your foundation by looking at your autonomic health, you won't just be an amazing leader in your business, you'll be an amazing leader in your life. I want to thank you guys for listening this evening. This is my contact information. My Instagram is honestly probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, but that is also my email address. Please do feel free, like I said, reach out, ask questions, share insight, share wins. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha.